Welcome to the ABCs of CPD and CFD. My name is Napoleon Bell, and I'm the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Why Police and Fire Do What They Do. But this segment, we're going to be talking about fire and what they do and why they do it, and actually about the history of the engine houses and the fire department here in Columbus and outside of Columbus even. But first, let me introduce our guests so we can get started with her. First to my left, a new person to the show, but with a firefighter and historian, as we say, with fire, is Bill T. Hall. Bill, I'd like to welcome you to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. And next to him, the co-host of the trio, or I guess the trio host, whatever you might call it, Lieutenant Sawyer.
Thank you
back again. Next to him. So now this time we're talking about fire. We're talking about the Columbus Division of Fire and the history, but we wanted to be able to go out into the community or into the firehouses to first check out and get them, see how they get ready, for their week, because they have 24 hours on, 48 hours off, but they have to get ready each and every time there's a change of shifts. So we want to go out to the firehouse. We went out to Firehouse 2, Engine House 2, to see what was going on there, and I think we have some video to follow this up with. Well, when we got here, there were so many things going on. All the ladders and trucks were coming out and going out into the common area out there, and everybody was checking all their equipment. Right. Is this something that happens on a daily basis?
That's something that every station does every day. When we change shifts in the morning at 8 o'clock, the guys will put their equipment on the vehicle, and they'll go around their vehicle and they'll check all the saws, the lights, the electric cords, the monitors, different types of things that we have on there to make sure they're going to function for us that day.
And speaking of that particular type of equipment, does each firefighter have a responsibility for a particular equipment, and are they trained in that particular one, or is this the responsibility of all the firefighters?
All firefighters are trained to the level that they could run or man any vehicle that we have in here. And they all can run the saws, run the small motors, and check the individual pieces of equipment. So we're all trained at the same level. But once you get assigned to a specific piece of equipment, you check that truck that day. Okay. So we don't. So everybody has some continuity. They're familiar with what's on there.
Okay. Now I saw, when everybody's out there, they were raising up that ladder and going all the way up. Now, how far up, first of all, does that ladder go?
100 feet.
100 feet.
Yeah.
So, that must get pretty scary up there, if the wind's blowing, it's kind of tilting back and forth.
It can, and it's obviously, when it's that high, the wind has its effect on it. Kind of looks like a fishing pole in the wind.
Okay.
But all the guys are comfortable with heights. You have to be. And that's actually part of our testing process to get on the fire department. We had an aerial ladder climb that we all had to perform to make sure that we could accommodate being at the end of that ladder.
Wow, I was just amazed. I probably couldn't be a firefighter then, because I'm not going up that high on a ladder, not unless I truly had to saving my own life. But with that said, and we talk about the equipment, and I see that the equipment that you've had here, with all the ladders, are they different? Are they the same? What signifies who's going to go out on what run?
All the fire stations have a specific run district that they operate in, and our stations are scattered around the city so that we all have overlap into certain areas of the city so that we get multiple trucks to multiple addresses. And we have a variety of ladders, like the platform you see here. It's got the bucket on the end where the firefighters stand, and we also have the straight ladders that the guy drives in the back of it.
Oh, okay.
And they're in different districts, so that we have a variety of equipment that arrives to a scene, so we have a choice of which one we can use.
We talk about teams and the bigger team of the firehouse, but then also the individual team of the different personnel on the fire trucks, such as yourself. And could you explain to me what's your role and responsibility on the truck, but then also the rest of the team on the truck, such as the driver and the person who sits next to him, et cetera, et cetera. Could you explain a little bit about that to me?
The company officer, the lieutenant or the captain on the individual vehicles are responsible for making sure that particular company performs their job on the fire scene or the medical scene, and I also make sure everybody does it safely, evaluate the situation, and take the appropriate steps to handle the emergency. And there always has to be that point of contact for the incident commander. He'll talk to me, and I'll talk to the crew, and that way I'll get his wishes done also.
Okay. Then what about, let's say, the driver? Is the driver, does he just drive, make sure we get there, and then do you have like a navigator? Who does all this? Because I'm sure maybe the driver does know where every place is, but maybe not.
Well, I'll be the company officer / navigator.
Okay.
Because if there's some spots that he's not familiar with, I've worked down here long enough that I can help them out if they need it. Most of our drivers are the senior members. They're more experienced as far as operating the apparatus, knowing the districts. So we'll have them drive us. When they get there, the drivers perform certain functions, like the driver of the engine company will run the fire truck, will run the pump so that we can get the water through the hoses, put the fire out. The driver of the ladder will position it correctly so we can use their ladder. They will put ladders to the outside of the building, the extension ladders to the outside of the building, so that people can come out or firefighters can go in to the second floor or more. The driver of the rescue, their responsibilities are get them to the accident scene, run the tools at the truck while the other two members are performing auto extrication. They'll handle the utilities at the home if it's on fire. We want to get the electric and the gas turned off, so a rescue driver will handle that kind of operation. I think that about covers the drivers of the different vehicles.
Okay. So, and I saw in some of the vehicles that there was one with a red hat. Is there a significance of the red hat?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to correct you.
Okay.
It's the red helmet.
The red helmet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fire department color coordinates their command structure. A black helmet will be a firefighter. A red helmet will be a lieutenant or a captain. A white helmet will be a battalion chief or higher.
Oh, okay.
So that we can see at a glance. If I'm looking for the officer of that vehicle, I'll look for that red helmet.
Okay.
Or if I'm looking for the battalion chief out front, I'll look for that white helmet.
Well, and speaking of that, and the command staff, you might have a large fire, and there might be engines coming from all over.
Sure.
Who's in charge?
The most senior battalion chief until a deputy chief or an assistant chief arrives on the scene.
Okay. And so I'm sure there's that communication then going on continually with that whole command staff.
Yeah, the command structure is that as higher ranking members arrive on the scene, they assume command after they have been briefed by the previous commander. And then they'll take the incident from that point, and the new incident commander will assign the previous incident commander a task.
Okay.
Maybe as the aide, or maybe go work a different sector of the fire.
Okay.
To be his eyes and ears.
Great.
Or hers.
Great. As I was looking at the trucks and walking through, I see some of them have names on them, like the Bulldogs, and I think the other one was
War Wagon.
War Wagon.
Yeah.
Is this like a little competition between the things, or is that just an identity for that particular truck?
The Bulldogs happen to be the station mascot, as you can see up on the wall.
Okay.
The War Wagon was something that 15 or 20 years ago, the officer that was assigned to that vehicle wanted something special on the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he got with the crews, and they decided on that. And it was just one of those things that we kind of liken ourselves to the military a little bit,
mm-hmm.
where when we go out, it's a fight, and that's how that kind of came about.
Of all the firehouses, who's the busiest in Columbus?
Oh, this one is.
This one's the busiest.
Absolutely.
All right, so you guys, everybody's trying to get to your point, to be the busiest and the best.
The busiest for sure, the best most definitely. But we're busy by the sheer number of vehicles that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Because every one of these trucks adds to our run total. So when you take 18 to 20,000 runs in the year, you're not in the station very long.
No, doesn't sound like it.
And the only other station that's this size is Station 1, and they're close to our run numbers. So just by our sheer volume of vehicles is why we're the busiest.
No doubt. 18 to 20,000 runs a year.
Yeah.
Out of this, so yeah, you're not sleeping too much here then.
No, there's not a whole lot of sleep that happens here.
Goodness gracious, you know, that's some great information in that, because I learned a lot, you know, when going out there, and I think that it made a big difference on my understanding of how you guys prepare every week and every day. And you don't think of those things, that especially just with all the equipment that you have to test each and every item.
Correct.
To make sure that it's working properly.
Correct.
Because you don't want to get to a fire
and the
it's
chainsaw
not
doesn't
working.
work. Yeah, that's the incident commander or the firefighter's not too happy at that time.
Exactly right. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on, we saw a little bit of, is the roll call. And it looks like, you know, when I was there, they were all standing up and all listening to the departing company was there, and also the ones who were coming on. Is that something that they do in every firehouse, or how does that all work?
Yeah, that is done in every firehouse. The start of the day is really at 7:58. Okay, and the two crews come together and share the data, and it's sort of like a military regimented thing. We check your uniform to make sure you're dressed properly, but you're ready for duty. You know, your personal and hygiene and everything is really straight. So it's a very important time in the firehouse.
Now, you said 7:58. That's very specific. Is that for every firehouse? 7:58. Everybody does them in unison.
For every firehouse, and you are not to be late for duty. Believe me, that is a very particular thing. Okay. So that's why it's at that time.
Okay, great. Well, you know, we're talking about duty, and we have, you know, the historian here, Firefighter Hall, and I wanted to find out, you know, fires in general. You know, why did the firefighter or firehouses, how did they get started here in Columbus, and why?
Well, early on, firefighters didn't exist. The actual people of the town were the firefighters, but there was no firefighting gear. So early on in the late 1700s, early 1800s, if there was a fire, just everybody ran out and they took their brooms and their wet mops and they tried to beat the fire out. In 1822, Columbus had a series of fires which destroyed 8 buildings, and City Council saw a need to establish some kind of firefighting force. So they purchased some axes, some ladders, and some poles for pulling down walls, and passed an ordinance that all men between the ages of 15 and 50 were required by law to report to a fire and to the little fire stations where the hand-pulled apparatus was stationed. Then, to save money, they ordered all of the homes to have a 10-quart leather bucket, and then those homeowners would bring those leather buckets to the fire, which usually meant the moms and the kids. So basically, everybody in the family was a firefighter early on to take whatever equipment we had. So in 1822, the city was providing some equipment, and then the men were, by order, to go to the fires and help put them out. And then the cities evolved from that. The fire equipment became more sophisticated. It became hand-drawn, where they had to pull it with ropes, so they needed a small shed to keep these hand-drawn pieces in. And then as the pieces got bigger, they needed bigger buildings. And as we became horse-drawn, then obviously we needed really, really large stations. So stations may have started, such as Station 2 at Chapel and 3rd, as a small shed that just housed a hand-drawn piece of apparatus. And then as the trucks got bigger or they got more, they would keep adding on to the stations or tear them down and build new stations. So a lot of stations have many, many generations on the same spot.
Wow, you know, this is some great history to know and knowledge of that. Where could somebody find, you know, I wish we had some pictures that we could have put together and shown for this, but if somebody wants to, you know, come look at some of this and look at this history, I saw in Station 2 that there was some history in Station 2. Is there a centralized location that somebody could come and see
the best place to go would be our Central Ohio Fire Museum. It is in an old Columbus fire station at Chestnut and 4th, right in the middle of downtown. It is a restored 1908 horse-drawn era fire station, and we have the hand-drawn apparatus there, the horse-drawn apparatus, motorized apparatus, and lots of photos, as well as the historian's library, and Station 1 on the 3rd floor. So the information is accessible and readily available to the public.
That's great. That's great. Now, also one thing that I saw when I was coming in is that all the engine houses have names. How did that start?
Most engine houses, we currently have 34 numbered stations.
Okay.
2 of them are combined, so we actually physically have 32. But in 2001, the mayor had a neighborhood initiative to name the engine houses and the police precincts so they weren't just known as Engine 31 or 32 or Precinct 1 or 2. And the initiative was opened up to the public, and the public submitted names as well as firefighters and police officers and suggestions for their engine houses. And they came back ranging from just area names like the Hilltop Station or Franklinton or Little Turtle to stations and precincts with names of maybe important people. For instance, Station 8 at Champion and Long was traditionally the segregated engine house, and our highest ranking African-American firefighter at the time was Battalion Chief Herman Harrison. So Station 8 at Champion and Long is named the Battalion Chief Herman Harrison Engine House. And Station 20 at 5th and Dawson is named the Higginbotham Engine House because he was the first recorded black firefighter in the city of Columbus in 1898. So there's lots of different reasons, both from firefighters, from the police officers, and from the public, but every engine house has and precinct has a name now from that 2001-2002 initiative.
Wow, that's very interesting, especially when you talk about the segregated firehouses. I mean, you don't think back, that was a possibility. And then you said, what was the year the first black firefighter?
1898 was Pleasant Higginbotham.
Okay.
And he was on the division, and at that point we also had a segregated engine house, and it was at basically Parsons and Oak, Station 12, which still stands.
Yeah, that building is still there today.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's not the Elvis house?
Like a little art museum right there, I think.
Which one's the one that has the Elvis?
That's 14's.
14's, okay.
They call that one the Graceland, North Graceland, as a tribute to Elvis Presley.
Okay, because I saw his picture right there. I think they have memorabilia in there. When we talk about pictures and things, you also have, with the engine houses, their personality is the mascots. Mm-hmm. Tell me something about these mascots and how that came about.
As you saw in the video, some of the engines and equipment are named, and that goes back to, again, that late 1700s, early 1800s period, where a prominent person might have bought the hand pumper. So it may have been the Donaldson steam engine. A lot of them were named after prominent people like George Washington or Benjamin Franklin. Some of them had comical names like the Salamander because it had this big long hose and it looked like a salamander. Some of them were called the Water Witch. So the apparatus was named many, many years ago, so it's a long-standing tradition. We have a steamer in the museum that's been called the Monarch after Queen Elizabeth because it came from Canada. So as you might imagine, a lot of the engine houses have the option of naming their apparatus and putting it on. We have apparatus called the River Rats, the Eagles, the Bulldog,
Top Gun.
the General, Top Gun. Now, that's all per the approval of the chief, of course,
right.
That those things are appropriate to be displayed. But any engine house that wishes to do something like that has the option of doing that.
And it's like a friendly competition between each house, because we're very territorial or neighborhood bound. And so when you see the War Wagon or Top Gun go down the street, that's your neighborhood fire station that's going down the street.
Exactly. Well, and it gives them a sense of team because
And
you have
pride.
that team name, and you're going out there. And you talk about competition. I think we talked about this a little bit in the video, but also when we're out there, about competition to get to the fire, like when you talk about those overlapping areas. So there's that competition sometimes to get to the fire first.
Safely.
Safely.
Yeah, very good point.
Not like the Natos, but safely.
Very good
So you want to get there safely, but I mean that's a healthy competition, and also showing that you want to get out there and save lives,
right?
First and foremost, but that you want to be able to get there.
It's like the coach put me in the game. I've learned my job. I'm the quarterback or the fullback. I want to be the first one to start in the game. Mm-hmm. So if that Michigan or Ohio State game is going on or whatever, please put me in there first so I can get there. So that's what that competition is all about.
Excellent.
So if you're ever on campus and you see the big long aerial ladder going down the street with Brutus Buckeye on the side of it, Station 13 is the Buckeye Station.
Ah, okay, okay. Well, good deal. You know, one thing I've always wondered about too, and I understand there's some history with it, is some of the officers' markings, such as the bugle, such as what lieutenant's wearing. Is there some significance and history behind that?
The root history is from the military, that there's different ranks and they would be bars, but the traditional tool for firefighters is a trumpet. And it was called a speaking trumpet, and because we don't have loudspeakers or PAs or walkie-talkies back in the late 1700s, 1800s, a speaking trumpet was the tool of the man or the engineer in charge of the fire. And it was used to transmit orders to the hand pumpers, to the hook and ladder men, to the hose carts, so that they could hear over the noise of the apparatus, the fire, and the men yelling. So it was basically the first form of a loudspeaker, which was made out of tin or metal. The fancy ones for presentation could be made out of silver and gold, but they were trumpets. So the fire department adopted the bars from the military and turned them into bugles. So one bugle, two bugles, cross bugles, three bugles would each denote one of the ranks in the fire service.
Well, and speaking of rankings, because I know it's different from fire to police, explain to our viewing audience, you know, what is the rankings and then what to see. So if I saw a lieutenant, how am I going to know that's a lieutenant? So tell us about the step-ups and rank.
Well, firefighters don't have any rank designation on their uniforms. We're denoted by the color of the patch on our uniforms and our jackets. And then as we go into officers, lieutenant would be, for instance, he has one bugle, he's a lieutenant. Two bugles would be a captain, and you can follow the chain up through that.
And one stripe.
Okay. And then
one
stripes on the sleeves.
Things like that, and then two stripes for captain and on up.
So how does it go up? So
the ranks is lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, executive officer, and fire chief. Now in the police, I believe it's sergeant, commander,
sergeant, lieutenant,
commander, then deputy chief, then chief.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So that's because you always wonder, you know, when you see people out on the street or you're responding to a fire call, what their ranking is, because as we talked about on the video, you know, who the highest ranking officer is the one who takes charge of the scene.
And the identifying marks we just discussed are on our daily uniforms. At the fire scene, as we're dressed up in all of that fire gear and have masks on, we need to have another way to identify ourselves, and that is the color of our helmets. So firefighters' helmets are black, officers, lieutenants are red with one stripe, a captain is a red helmet with two stripes, and then above that,
just white.
They go to white for chief officers. Right. So 5 men getting off of a fire truck, 4 of them are going to be black, one's going to be red.
Okay, okay. So you talked about the helmets a little bit, and there's an eagle on that helmet that I saw. It was kind of like golden crescent eagle. What is the significance with that?
It started during the era in New York City where different companies would have a mascot. And there could be dogs, there could be birds, lions, and an eagle just ended up being the traditional ornament, and it was used to hold the front piece on the front of the helmet that has our engine company name. The color designates whether we're an engine or a ladder, and the eagle was used as basically the holder for the high leather front piece.
Wow, okay. So, you know, and I'm not sure if it ran on the previous thing, but you talk about leather, and the helmets were leather early on. Talk about how the equipment has evolved a little bit.
In the late 1700s, they weren't using helmets; they were just using a hat, which basically dispersed water from fighting the fire, because they weren't really going in and doing interior firefighting. And they were made out of canvas or sailcloth, pressed felt or pressed leather. About 1810, they developed a leather helmet, and they put what they called combs, which were folded pieces that were sewn together, and it made a lot more stronger structurally, like a safety helmet. So in effect, they went from a baseball cap to a safety helmet in that time frame up to about 1810. And from that point on, the more combs or the more stitching is on the helmet, And in the leather and in the metal rims, the safer the helmet was for impact for falling objects. Bricks falling or slate roofs even today are a problem with us. And then around 1904, they also expanded and started making aluminum helmets and plastic helmets. Obviously, aluminum helmets conduct electricity, so those weren't around too long. But there are still plastic and fiberglass helmets on the market, and the choice between leather and plastic or different fiberglasses is strictly a choice of the city and each fire department.
And it's really the evolution of the equipment, the research and design, scientific studies or whatever to make us more safe. I think the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association Ordinance 1500, stipulates the type of equipment that we're supposed to use and how we can improve the safety of the firefighters going into emergency situations. The equipment is called personal protection equipment. So that includes the bottle, the turnout coat, the, what did you call it? The hat?
Oh, yes.
No, helmet. He corrected you.
I know. I was corrected many times on that when I was at the firehouse.
Suspenders, but even our fatigue wear, the blues that you see, all that is made out of special scientific Nomex things like that to retard or keep heat out and keep our body warmth in, things like that.
Okay. So how do you see, when we talk about equipment, when we talk about the evolution of equipment, what do you think is the single most important item that has evolved or that you use daily? What do you see as...
In my opinion, self-contained breathing apparatus. In the early 70s, which is basically the air tank on our back, that brought us from being in smoke, cyanides, poisons, gases, carbon monoxide, all of the things that are produced in a fire. It brought us out of that environment to fresh air that we could see, fresh air that we could breathe, and allowed us to do a lot more firefighting and a lot more depth into a structure.
I think it was informational technology. I think we've gone into the computer age right now, and I think we're really advancing that and not only using that personal equipment in the firehouse, both for online education and training, but also in the apparatus. And I really do see in the future, for example, the GPS. When I first came on, I had to know all the streets in my neighborhood and had to learn them by heart. Now that GPS is going to be very helpful for us finding locations. And I do see in the future we'll be able to look at buildings en route and see the actual emergency situation, possibly at even three-dimensional view.
Right.
So that's really going to be the future.
I really agree with you on that because, as you see with Google Maps and all that, they can actually zoom in on your house. So what if they could do something like that, in real time,
right.
when it's an emergency situation.
Right.
So I could definitely see that, and that would be amazing. Last thoughts, okay, if they want to go to the firehouse or to the firehouse and or to the house where they have all the history, the museum, do you have a phone number for them by chance or location and time?
One phone number will do both.
Okay.
The phone number accesses the Fire Museum and the Historian's Office, and that's the local area code 614, telephone number 464-4099. And that'll get the Historian's Office or the Fire Museum, either one.
And if you want to visit the fire station, you can call our office, 645-7377, or you can go to the website at www.columbusfire.org. Click on Community Relations, and it'll tell you how to visit a fire station or schedule a program.
Great. Thank you so much. I learned so much about the history of fire.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll be right back after these words. Please stay tuned for our second segment.